All right. Hello, Deepti. Welcome to the Creating Meaningful Work podcast.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, so good to have you here. And huge congratulations because just yesterday, right? You launched your beautiful book. Those who are listening, you can't see her, but go look on her Instagram, go look up her book, I Choose Myself. She looks like a goddess on the front cover here, just in all her glory. So congratulations. How are you feeling now that this is like out in the world?
Yeah, it's been really emotional just because I'm putting myself out there so vulnerably. And when you do that, there's a lot of judgment, there's a lot of comments, and you're really just pouring your heart out. But I think it's a good thing. Like I knew that I had a platform and I wanted to do something good with it. And I think in sharing my journey can really help, other women who might have felt like me. So I thought it was an important thing for me to do.
We're so grateful that you have. Most people know you from the show Love is Blind, but today I really want to dive into who is Deepti outside of Love is Blind, because this show has been how we've been introduced to you, but you are a beautiful human being with such strong convictions, and you have been such an inspiration to so many, and women in particular. So I'd love to first off ask you, like, tell us a little bit about who you are outside of Love is Blind. Like, what have you done for work? Like, what does your career look like? What did life look like before Love is Blind?
Yeah, I was actually in technology. I was a data analyst. I worked, in that space, and so I actually loved it. Like, it's just so nice to be able to kind of know what goes in the background of like building apps and like development work, and it's just so cool how technology has really grown. And I love that I have that background because I can use that with my like emotional side and my emotional intelligence and kind of pair those two things together, and I feel like you can really make some magic. So I just love that I have that background in me. And when I was in college, I did psychology and business management, so like just having those tools under your belt really helps you kind of elevate your career.
What a force, Deepti. What a force.
Force.
Tech, psychology. Yes.
I feel like that's the magic of women too, because you can like pair those things together and bring this beautiful new perspective to like data and technology.
Exactly. Adding some emotion in there, and you can target a bigger audience when you have technology. Technology is like growing so rapidly and has in the last decade. So just using that, and incorporating things of like, just self-esteem, confidence, and all of those things, bottle those up together and you can create some magic.
Yeah. So what made you, so you're in tech, you're working with data. What made you decide to go on Love is Blind?
Yeah, that's so random that it happened. Actually, my best friend who lives in LA sent me a random cast call, and I was like, my parents would never let me do this. Like, I had just gotten I got out of a 6-year relationship like the year prior, so I wasn't really dating, and it was pandemic time. So I was like, dating apps aren't going to work for me. And then this fell into my lap, and I was like, oh, this is kind of wild. And I started filling out the questionnaire. You guys, it was so long. I was like, I haven't even thought about what I'm looking for in a relationship like this in so long, like put it down on paper, right? And so I don't know, the next day something came over me and I was like, you know what, I'm just gonna do it. Let's just see what happens. And like literally within days, I got a call and they're like, you're in. I was like, oh, okay. So it kind of just transpired that way. But since I got that call, it was a whole year before we even started filming, which I really needed that time to like continue growing and being better. Totally.
Wow.
Yeah.
Did you watch season 1 of Love is Blind?
I did,
Okay.
but I had watched it like so prior, like I had to like go back and rewatch it because I was like, wait, what does this really entail? And I actually love the concept of it because someone's falling in love with who you truly are on the inside, because your physical appearance changes constantly. And so it's like, what do you prioritize, you know?
It's definitely like a different take on like the guilty pleasure reality dating, like that, like you're going to be behind a screen. And I think, I don't know if the producers planned on like you having this huge moment of like choosing myself. Like when those words came out, it just like for me sitting there watching it, like full body goosebumps. Like I just feel like culture asks women constantly to abandon themselves, constantly. And I don't know. And I'm sure you get into this more in your book, but maybe you can tell us, like, did you see that modeled for you? Like what, that's not like what we usually hear. That's not the message we usually get, is to like choose yourself, living your truth, like be true to who you are. Like it's get swept up, make room for others, make space for what other people need or want, and compromise. And so how did you, like, when did that become a value for you?
I think honestly, that moment was what triggered like it really triggered me to think differently about myself. My whole life, I've been this people pleaser. I've always like poured too much love into other people's cups without pouring it into myself. And so I always use that one analogy, you know, when the air drops on in an airplane, they say to like put it on yourself first before you help others. I'm the complete opposite. I always put it on other people first, and it kind of suffocates who I am. And I think that really triggered growth in me. That moment, I realized like other people's opinion of me doesn't define my reality. And I don't need to prove my worth to anybody. If they don't see it, they don't see it. As long as you have that confidence and love inside of yourself, that's the only thing that matters. And so, yeah, in that moment, I was forced to do nothing but choose myself, you know, and you know, Shake never made me feel that I was worthy, but I didn't need him. I didn't need him to let me know that I was. I needed to let myself know. And that was what that reminded me.
I love that. I needed to let myself know. Joanna and I are friends. So Joanna knows, like, I feel like often in the moment in a situation, especially like a high pressure situation or like a reality show where they're like creating these emotions, right? Like it's easy to get swept up. Like I feel like so often in the moment, I don't choose myself, even in small ways. But afterwards, I like sense that and I'm like, oh, that's not like, that was not what I wanted, or that was not conducive to me, or that didn't honor myself. So I'm so fascinated. I admire so much that like in all of these emotions, like I said, reality show emotions, like a wedding, they're like, they're all like rolling out a white carpet for you, like in the midst of that you could still sense that. And I guess my question would be like, were there things like in your body, were there what were signals, like what was it your felt experience choosing yourself? Like for those of us that maybe aren't pros at choosing ourselves, like what were your alarm bells? What were your flares? What did you listen to in yourself? What did you hear happening that you went, no, this is not to choose him, and this would be not choosing myself?
Yeah, I think there's many moments that we suppress our intuition. And, you know, you get that, you know, it's like, I really believe in energy so much. And, you know, even though I feel like sometimes I get wrapped up in what people say, sometimes words aren't always aligning with actions. And so you kind of like, even with words, you get this intuitive sense that like, you know, the energy is not right, like something is not right. And instead of suppressing that, we have to really listen to it and say, what is going on around me that's making me feel this way? Why am I feeling uneasy? Why is it that like this isn't working out? Right. And so I think we have to show ourselves grace even when we make mistakes of suppressing that. But we have to, you know, when we come back to that moment, you're like, aha, I should have done that differently. You know, show ourselves some love and grace and knowing that we should have, but like identify why you were feeling that way. And I think it's important that we grow from it, right? And know that like, okay, next time I'm in this type of situation and I'm feeling those feelings, that you need to really address them instead of just suppressing it. You have to kind of listen to your intuition and your judgment. And, you know, I feel like you just know in your heart when something is right. And, you know, and if it's not, like you just have to make the hard decision.
Yeah, it's that like when you hear it, it's that courage to like follow through on it, right? Like you can hear
Yes,
it, that's the first step, and then to like choose it is the next step.
absolutely. I write that in my book, actually. One of my if you guys have watched The Princess Diaries, it's so wild, but that quote really resonates with me so much today. But it's like, the like courage is not the absence of fear, right? Like rather the judgment that something is more important than fear. And
Mhm.
that is, choosing yourself can be really hard.
Mhm.
So hard. There's so many pressures from within, and then there's so much at times it feels that's like at stake. It's yeah, I think it can be overwhelming and intimidating. And then on the other side of that, I think there are moments you can choose a relationship or choose a career or choose something and still choose yourself. And I was just hoping you could speak to that a little bit for us, like even without detail, but of situations or times, like how does it feel different to choose something that doesn't feel mutually exclusive from choosing yourself?
Mhm.
Yeah, I think it's hard to kind of go through life without having a partner sometimes, right? You always want somebody by your side, that support, like somebody to go home to at the end of the day, whatever that is. But I think, a lot of people are scared of being alone, but you find out so much of yourself when you're alone. Like, where do your thoughts go when you're by yourself? Like, what is it that you like to do? I think for me in relationships, I always tend to put somebody else before me. So I'm always thinking like, oh, what does he want to do? Like instead of saying, what is it I want to do? Or we say, what is it we want to do? You know what I mean? So I think
Yeah,
you
the
have
we
to,
slash you.
yeah, exactly. So I think we have to have a balance between making sure that we're giving all of our love into a relationship, but at the same time giving that same love inward as well. Like I always tend to do too much on the other side and not enough for myself. And some people sometimes that like hurts a relationship. Even like my ex-boyfriends, they feel it. They're like, oh, you're like not taking care of yourself. Like, why are you thinking about me first? And so it kind of
Mm,
like creates an imbalance in a relationship. So I think it's very important to put yourself first, and then
yeah.
the right things will like come to you and be attracted to you.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I With that visual, the plane oxygen mask, Deepti, that you mentioned, I'd always heard that growing up, and there was always something in me that was like, no, you should put it on the other person first. Like I would
Right.
always think that, and it wasn't until I got older where I realized, oh, that is why, like literally in the event of an emergency, you need to be breathing to be able to help someone else, because if you don't have your mask on, you literally cannot help that child next to you. And
Exactly.
I think it really does go against like what we have been trained as women, especially to do, and to how we're trained like to behave and to act and to show up and serve for others.
Yeah,
Um
totally.
can you speak a little bit? So I in your book, you I had no idea that you lived in you you started I knew you were born in India, but I didn't realize that you lived there until you were 8 years old. Is that right?
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah. Can you talk a little bit about growing up in India? And it just seems like throughout your story, you have had this natural tendency to know who you are, like, and to be in that space. And I'm curious, like, ha- is that how you perceive it? Like, have you always been that person true to yourself? And can you talk a little bit about little Deepti and growing up in India?
Yeah. Yeah. No, yeah, growing up in India, I was always like a happy little girl, like, but I always knew that I had like like a mature, like an old soul type of vibe. So I would always be like attracted to like older people more. Like I'd hang out with like, my grandparents. It wasn't really as much like little kids and stuff, which I enjoyed as well. But I like to keep to myself more, which is not who I am today. I'm very, very extroverted. But I think I have not always been true to myself. That is 100, like you'll see this in this book. I go through a lot of obstacles, and I go through a lot of self-loathing and confidence issues, body image issues. There's a lot of moments in my life where I've had, an uphill battle. But through that climb, I just got stronger and stronger. And I came out on the other side so much easier. It was easier to accept myself. But there would always be moments and situations where I would go back to that insecurity and like lacking that confidence. But every single time I realized I knew what I had to do, like what type of work I had to put in to see myself differently. I needed to change the conversation I was having with myself in my head. It was always, not always, but it was a lot of times negative. Like I would compare myself to people around me. I would just, not like what I looked like in the mirror. There was just all these issues, but now I see it so differently, like embracing your uniqueness. Like even my stretch marks from losing weight, those are scars of your strength. Like you've been through a lot, you put in a lot of hard work. Like it's nothing to be ashamed of. It's something you should embrace and, just create more love for yourself. And but no, I even to this day, I am not perfect. There's so many moments throughout the day where I'm like, oh, like I don't like this or I don't like that. But you catch yourself and you know what to do with your thoughts in that moment, and you're
Mhm.
like, oh, I'm having this negative thought. Like, why? What's the deep rooted issue of why? What is it that I need to work on to see myself differently? So I think it's to catch it in the moment and then to regulate that emotion and say, hey, wait, like you are beautiful, you are strong, like you need to change the way you're looking at yourself. So I think you'll see that within the book of like that struggle of going back and forth and like losing the confidence and working on it to gain it back, things like that.
Mhm. Did
That's beautiful.
you
It's like not something you master and then you're always good at that. Like
Exactly.
sometimes choosing yourself is really painful or really, like we said, overwhelming. I like that idea that you're just gonna, sometimes I beat myself up that I'm like, I know better than to be hard on myself about that, or I know better than to be choosing that again. But to know like, no, this is just part of the process. You do that again, catch yourself again, come back to your truth again, again.
Exactly. It's an everyday effort. It really is.
I think too, Becky, you kind of touched on it, but one thing that we don't really talk about that often is the grief that can come with choosing ourselves at times. Like
Yes.
that choosing ourselves, putting that oxygen mask on ourselves first, like can often bring hard, like sad decisions. And a lot of grief can come up with that. And I think that we intuitively know that. And sometimes I think that's why we don't always choose ourselves. We don't make those decisions because we know, okay, if I do this, then that's going to mean I have to make this decision. And then I have to change this in my life. And then I'm going to have to do that. And like, that's really hard. All that stuff is really hard. And I don't want to do that. So then we just end up compromising.
Yes, exactly. You nailed it.
Have you experienced that? Like, what does that look like for you?
And what do you,
Yeah.
I guess I would wonder, how do you care for yourself in that? Like, how do you care for yourself in that grief?
Yeah. I think it's totally normal to feel sad or upset after making the right decision because that's exactly what happened to me. It's not all rainbows and butterflies and like after that moment you're like, "Oh, I feel so good about this." It's like then you sit and deal with the consequences of the decision that you've just made. But I think it's okay to like go through that grieving period essentially and you're like, "Okay, like I expected this to happen, but something else did." But that's why these days I let go of expectations and I just allow things to flow and just be. And you just navigate it as it comes. It's like, okay, yes, I've made this hard decision and I'm sad about it. But now what do I need to do to change that? Right? Like I need to change my behaviors. I have to, come up with different patterns now. Yes, this person's not in my life anymore, but it's okay. Life is still good and you can focus on these other areas of your life. And so when you're shifting the focus off of what you're lacking and shift it to what you're about to gain, I think you start to see life in a different perspective. You start to get more hopeful and you start to
Yeah.
see like the good things that are going to come into your life from this thing that has been removed, right? It just makes room for better things to come along.
Mm-hmm.
I love that. I think that's something I forget to do all the time. Like how you said, separating that sadness, like from the choice that like, I think I have a inherent idea sometimes that like, if I'm sad or if it's hard in a way of grieving, then it's wrong. Like I made the
Right.
wrong choice. That was bad. I did something. Oh my God, I blew up my life. What did I missed my chance, and separating that, like I'm sad and that's still okay. There's still wonderful things to look forward to. Just because I'm sad doesn't mean that was the wrong choice.
Exactly.
I love that. That's so helpful.
Mhm. It makes a difference if you just change your perspective a little bit. Yeah.
Deepti, I'm curious, like, how did you learn this? Like, is there a practice that you have or teachers that you have in your life? Like because so much of what you're talking about is, so important and profound and important for us to be navigating. I'm curious, like, how have you learned all of this?
Honestly, by going through the struggle, in the Indian culture, in South Asian culture, you don't really talk about your problems like this. Like it's kind of taboo to go to therapy. It's, sometimes like when you're like, I'm sad, your parents are just like, well, get out of it. It's a funk, you know what I mean? So it's like it kind of is downplayed a little bit. And so I think growing up, I would just suppress my emotions a lot. And so my thoughts would go crazy. And I think the biggest help has been something like this, like you're just talking out your feelings, and it's like, oh, like I had no idea this is how I felt. That's why writing this book was so therapeutic for me. There were so many moments where I was writing it where I was just like crying my eyes out and like purging the emotions that I suppressed from such a long time ago. And so it was like a way to release, and it's okay to release those emotions and talk. Like we need to normalize talking about things even though they're difficult, and we all have skeletons in our closets. But if we're not vulnerable enough to share them, we're not going to find connection with other people. Like we can't just pretend we're these perfect human
Oh
beings,
yeah.
because no one is. And so if we
Yeah.
normalize talking about the bad things that we've done, and then expressing how those bad things have helped us grow and become better people, I think that just like gives people an example. Oh, like she did this or she went through that, but look at her now. So like it gives them hope that there can be change and that there can be like a healthy growth. So that's, I don't know, it just kind of comes to me now. I'm just like, that's cool. Like that's cool that those are my thoughts now, they're like so much more positive and beautiful.
Well, we're thankful that they do, and thankful that you are sharing them in this book.
Yeah, it was important
Yeah.
to me to do so.
I was reading a book that was talking about therapy and stuff. And one of the questions in the book that someone had asked this author was like, if you can't afford therapy, or for people, living in countries where therapy is not accessible, how do you heal? And what he said was exactly what you're saying, Deepti. He was like, you talk about it, like you have community, you have spaces where, you can, he was saying, when you come home from the end of the workday and someone at work was, treating you poorly, and having someone to just be able to, call on the phone or shoot a text to or talk to, just to say like, oh, this person was really treating me badly today. And for them to be like, oh, that sucks. And you're like, yeah, it did. I was really mad. And just having that back and forth, how healthy that is. And that's really like what therapy is at the end of the day, right? Someone to like listen to you and validate your emotions.
Absolutely. And sometimes it's also about like not validating your emotions, like it's like we tend to get carried away so much sometimes in certain situations, and we act out of heightened emotion and fear, right? And so it's nice to be able to talk it out with someone and be like, hey, I see your perspective, but did you think about it from this other angle? And that provides that for people to kind of be like, oh, like I hadn't even thought of it in this way. So I think it's really healthy, absolutely so healthy, to just talk. It's very important.
And I really resonate with your comment that like, that's the only way we connect with each other, right? Is like without those vulnerabilities, we can talk and talk, but if we're not sharing that, I mean, we live in a culture that, I mean, you hear it all the time. It's so played out, but like cancel culture, like if anybody has mistakes or missteps, then that's it, it's over. And I think that causes a lot of us to like, I don't want to share my vulnerabilities, or the times I didn't choose myself, or the times I did something I'm not proud of or something embarrassing. And I think that's why it's so important and so helpful that you're doing that in this book, especially with you're thrown onto the scene and women just admire you now and all of this, for you to say, also, this is real. There were times that I didn't feel that way, or I didn't make those choices. On the other side of that though, as you were writing the book, was there anything that came up that you felt really proud to put on the page? Like something really like that it felt really good?
Yes, absolutely. My entire like 3-4 years leading up to Love is Blind, I even just the last year when I told you guys, like after I got that cast call, right? It was a whole year had gone by before we started filming. I just realized how much I needed that time to myself. I wasn't dating, I was at home because it was the pandemic. I really needed to put so much more like effort into becoming a better version of myself in those like couple years. And I lost 80 pounds. I like just it was so healthy mentally and physically that like I was just exuding this confidence, and like everyone around me could sense it, and it was so dope. Like I was just like, wow, like when you really take care of yourself, you just like operate at this higher vibrational frequency, and
I
it just
love
like
it.
attracts the right types of things. Like, and
Yeah.
if I had gone through that experience and like it broke me, that experience definitely broke me, but had I done it a year earlier, I would just be such a mess. I would be a huge mess. And so because I put that work in before I did that show, I think I was able to handle it with so much more grace and so much more like, okay, I'm okay with this. Like, I know I'll get through it. So yeah, just seeing that growth in myself, like I just admire my past version of, you know, being able to get through that. So
Yes, I love it.
What was the hardest part about like after the show was over? Because I imagine if it was me, I'm like putting myself in your shoes, and all of a sudden, you know, I'm getting all these eyes are on you, and so many people now are also like looking up to you and inspired by you. Like I'd imagine that would be a lot of pressure. Like I'd feel like, oh, now I have to be this like really great person and like I'm just a person, but this like image has been portrayed of me. Like I'm curious, what's the hardest part about that? How do you navigate all of that?
yeah, I think the hardest part is trying to be perfect. And what I'm learning now, though, is that we have to embrace not being perfect. And we have to change the definition of what perfectionism even is, right? And so I think for me, it's been so important to be vulnerable and share these types of things like, hey, like, you guys put me on this pedestal. And that's the main reason I wanted to write this book, too, because it's like, I am not perfect in any way. I am constantly growing and figuring it out and making mistakes along the way, sometimes big, sometimes small, you know what I mean? And so I think it really that's what we have to share. We tend to share our highlight reel, and sometimes we have to share the behind the scenes. And it's like I want to open up more about the bad as well as show the good, you know? And I think that's I hope that like I can use this platform that I've been given to do that.
I am so done with like even perfect as a thing. I'm like, perfect doesn't exist because like you would have a different view of what perfect is, and like you would have a different view of what perfect is. We would all have our different ideas of what perfect is. So how is there even perfect? Like that's not real. There's like, which also means that imperfect is not real, right? We're just humans having a human experience. It's not right or wrong, perfect or imperfect. It's just like humanity being expressed.
Exactly. It's like, why does there have to be a judgment around it, right? It's like if you take away judgment and ego, life is so much better because you're like, oh, like I understand your perspective. Like I understand you. I understand your mistake. I understand what you're doing. Like it's so important. You're totally right. It's like perfectionism is in the eye of the beholder type of situation, right? Yeah, absolutely.
We all have our own idea of what it is that we like try to hold ourselves to. We have like, oh, this is what it is. It's this standard that I'm supposed to be. But yeah.
And then you go on a reality show and die a million ego deaths, and you know, it's, Embrace imperfection.
Yes, yes, I'm the most imperfect person and I love it.
Yeah, because we're all humans just navigating our
Mhm.
human experience.
Yeah.
You've talked a little bit about, this platform that you've been given and how you want to use it. And you've talked about, building your empire. I'd love to hear a little bit about like what your dreams are for the future. Like what does that empire look like? Like what do you want to use your platform for? Like what does that look like for you?
Yeah, this is such a good question because I feel like it's going to change over time and evolve. But right now, I want to do more like talks. Like I did the TEDx talk, which is so exciting. I'm doing a couple more conferences coming up. I'm working with charities that talk about this exact thing. Like, how can we help like young women see things differently? How do we take the pressures off of society and to
Yeah.
allow to just live? And so I also want to start a podcast and kind of talk about the hard things and give my listeners kind of like a homework assignments to like for the week to kind of help themselves, like what am I going to do that can help me get better at this, or just starting hard conversations. I think we really have to normalize talking about the hard stuff. And so if we start to do that, I think we'll start to see such beautiful change in the world and the judgment will go away. And I think people will just start to see things from a different perspective. So yeah, I'm just really looking forward to I'm doing the Self-Made Summit in Toronto. And just connecting with other entrepreneurs and powerful females that are like doing something with the world and seeing that sometimes life is not just about marriages or relationships, it's much broader than that, and it's okay to have a career and to be there for your family. So it's like, yeah, just I'm hoping that we can have those hard conversations and start something cool and fresh, and yeah, just make this society better.
Yes. I think that's a great segue to announce that you are also going to be at the Yellow Conference in October
Yes,
next year. We got a
yes.
little time, but I'm so excited.
I can't wait. I can't wait. I'm honored.
Yes, I'm so excited that you're going to be there and looking forward to the conversations there and just everything that you're talking about. This, the platform, using your platform for good and for inspiring others and having hard conversations and embracing our humanity. I almost said imperfections, but I'm also like over that word too. I'm like, that's not even, if perfect's not a thing, imperfect isn't either. It's just
totally
like
right.
existing, right?
Yes.
I can't wait to see in a year what new ways your vision has evolved, right?
Yes.
Like that'll be so fun.
I know. I'm so excited to see how it all comes to fruition.
So we have a few rapid fire questions for you. Just some fun little questions here. Number one, what is your go-to comfort music? Like when you're feeling like crappy day, or maybe it's a good day too, but just the music that just makes you feel like cozy comfort.
Yeah.
The good stuff.
I would say I would throw on that coffee shop playlist, like the acoustic style. Like I like an alternative style, like Mumford and Sons, or like sometimes if I'm like really sad and I want to make myself cry, I go to that country music. But like this, like because the lyrics is it for me. Like the lyrics really hit you, I'm like, I want to hit it where it hurts, baby.
Nothing will get you like a good Miranda Lambert song. Just
Oh my
sob it out.
right.
Oh my gosh.
Exactly. Some Dean
Yes.
Lewis. Oof.
Oh, love it. Your go-to drink at a coffee shop.
Ooh, I like espressos, baby. Black
Just
coffee
pure
and
espresso.
Yes.
Nice.
Gas
I'm a
pedal.
black coffee kind of girl too. I don't go
Yeah.
hard. I feel like espresso is another level, just like a shot of espresso, but I love my black coffee.
Yeah, black coffee is the way to go.
How about, okay, one person that you love to follow on social media and why?
Ooh, that's a really good Jay Shetty.
Oh yeah.
Yes, I just love his inspirational everything, like he's just done so much internal work that he is like, I feel like he's just so profound and has so much wisdom. And yeah, I just love him and his wife. Like, I just admire them so much for just like, putting out good into the world.
I feel like, have you guys connected? So I feel like you should
No,
collab.
we really should. I should reach out to him because
Yeah.
Put it
I
out there.
love him.
Let's put it out there.
Manifesting that. Yes.
Yeah, I feel like that you guys could create some really good stuff together.
Yeah,
And when it
100%.
happens, I want all the credit.
I will give you all the credit.
I'm totally joking. Are you a book reader? I mean, I know you've written a book. Do you read books?
I'm more of an Audible type of person.
Okay.
Yes.
Favorite Audible book that you've listened to recently?
Oh my gosh, I have not listened to very many recently.
Well, you probably had not a lot
Colleen?
of time, I'd imagine.
Yeah. What is it Colleen Hoover? Colleen Hoover's new book. Have you guys read it? It's so
Yes,
good.
I think I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, It Ends With Us.
Yes.
Yeah, I've heard so many amazing things about this, and I started reading it, and it's so good. And she has another one. I think it starts with a V. Verity or something like that, but I heard it's really, really, really good. So I'm kind of like diving in deep there. My sister and my best friend Caitlin recommended it to me, so I was like, I think I need to get into this.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
I'll have to check that out. Okay, last question. What is one thing that you're really excited about right now?
Oh man, I'm just excited for the unknown. Right now, life is just like going. I'm getting all these cool opportunities. And it's like, I'm just ready to not have any expectations and just kind of like be a yes person and just like live life to the fullest and embrace all of these experiences. Yeah.
My husband always says, the life he wants to live, like the apex of what he is shooting for all the time, is a Forrest Gump life, where he's like, you just do stuff you enjoy, like you want to run, and all of a sudden you're running across the country, and then like you're into ping pong, and then you're in the Olympics, and then like he's like, I just want to like follow what I love, and it just like runs into like amazing experiences with amazing people, and I think that's what's in store for you.
Yes. Yeah. When you're younger, like you don't really think about the future. You're like, you're just like living, you're just like, oh, I have to do this, I have to do that. You're just like going through it without like that like heaviness of, oh, okay, I expect this or I want this to happen. So I want to bring myself back to that age and just have fun.
I love that. Yeah. My little 3-year-old, every morning, he always asks me, Mommy, what are we going to do today? And it's like always so sweet because he just like has no idea what we're gonna do today, and I just tell him what we're gonna do. And
that's so cool.
and I love that mindset of kind of like, all right, let's see what comes, let's see what happens, and love to see it. Well, Deepti, thank you so much for this conversation and being here with us today. And just for being yourself and sharing yourself with the world and using what you have to make an impact. We just really appreciate you and your presence here.
I really enjoyed this conversation, so I appreciate you guys. A therapy session really today.
Yes. Right? Yeah.
Anytime we're here.
I love it. Thank you guys.
Thank you.